For weeks now, Liberal MPs have been privately venting their frustrations with Justin Trudeau, telling each other and leaking to reporters that there needs to be a change in the leadership of the Liberal Party. But now a veteran MP from the East Coast is putting his name and his face to the call for change in an exclusive interview with Power and Politics. Sean Casey is the Liberal Member of Parliament for Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, and he joins me now. Sean Casey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you.
I want to start with a very simple question. Do you think Justin Trudeau should stay on as Liberal leader?
No, I don't. My job has always been to project the voice of the people I represent in Ottawa, to be Charlottetown's representative in Ottawa and not the reverse. And the message that I've been getting loud and clear and more strongly as time goes by is that it's time for him to go. And I agree.
Did you come to that conclusion before you started hearing it at the doors? I mean, when you talk to people in your riding, what are your constituents saying to you?
There's a general malaise. There's a level of tiredness. The number one issue at the doors in Prince Edward Island has for a long time been healthcare. That's been supplanted by concerns over leadership. And people have had enough. They've tuned him out, and they want him to go. I can't tell you the number of people that have said to me, Sean, I'm afraid of P.E.I. I want to vote for you, but I can't.
So this is something I've heard from MPs that I've been speaking with over the last little while, and I'm sure you have read the reports and maybe even seen evidence of it yourself, of the efforts to try to force a leadership change at the top of your party. How widespread is the sentiment you've just expressed inside the Liberal caucus?
I would say it's wider than what meets the eye, honestly. There are a lot of people who have concerns. There are many who have a myriad of reasons not to express them. But those that have come to the same conclusion as me seem to be becoming more emboldened with the passage of time. I think that to a person, it's for the same reason as me, is because everywhere they go in their riding, that's what they're getting.
Do you know about these efforts to get people to sign on to a pledge or to draft a letter to bring to the Prime Minister to ask him to resign?
Only secondhand, and really not much more than what has been reported in the media. I am aware that there have been meetings. I know of some of the people who have been at the meetings. I am not one of them. I have not seen a pledge. I've heard about a pledge. And all of that is public information at this point. So I'm not much wiser than you on anything, David, including this.
Okay, because my information and my other colleagues is that maybe a couple of dozen people have either signed on or pledged to sign on. The hope is the number could grow. We saw reporting from my colleague Althea Raj in the Toronto Star that it's 30 to 40 people, MPs who maybe are part of it. Does that align with what you're seeing and hearing when you talk to people in your caucus, or does that seem way too high?
That seems plausible, but I don't have anything to base it on. I can tell you that I have not talked to or don't know of 30 or 40 people. I talked to one person that was at one of the meetings that told me there were 20 plus people there. There's probably been a dozen that I've talked to that would align with that. So the number is probably higher than a dozen and possibly higher than 20.
Okay, so 20 plus people at a single meeting to talk about trying to remove Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader. This is 20 plus Liberal MPs. I want to make sure I'm clear on what you're saying there.
That's what I've heard. I wasn't there.
Okay. You're running again, right? That's your plan as of right now, Sean Casey. Will you run again if Justin Trudeau is still the leader?
If he signs my nomination papers, I think this interview may have an impact on that.
Okay, so whether he stays or goes doesn't determine whether you stay or go, but do you think you risk repercussion by having this conversation today?
I honestly doubt it. And whether he stays or goes, yes, I am running again. I have an obligation to the people of Charlottetown to keep Pierre Poilievre out of the Prime Minister's chair in any way, shape, or form. I think I'm the best bet to be able to do that. I hope my constituents feel the same way. And whether Justin Trudeau is a leader or not, If I am, I have completed all of the prerequisites to be able to run. I've done the 3,500 doors. I've got 65% of the spending limit in the bank account. I've got all the required monthly donors. So I'm good to go, and I'm girding for the fight. This is a fight worth fighting, regardless of whether or not we have Justin Trudeau leading the party.
But Justin Trudeau's argument, and the people close to him, is that he's the best option to stop P.E.I. You say, based on what you're hearing in Charlottetown, that that is not true. So if not Justin Trudeau, who should lead the Liberal Party? Are you advocating for a particular candidate or just a leadership change?
I'm advocating for a leadership change, not for a particular candidate. I think that there are several very qualified people who would inspire the country. Any one of a handful of names that we frequently hear. And unfortunately, people have tuned Justin Trudeau out. I think a robust leadership convention would spark a lot of interest, bring forward some new ideas, and have people looking at the Liberal Party all over again without the malaise or the tiredness factor that we see every day.
There has been an argument I've heard from MPs, we're both East Coasters, I've heard it from that part of the country, that they believe the ceiling of accessible voters goes way up if there is a leadership change, and there's a potentially broader pool of the electorate open to you. I'm told this is something that has been discussed pretty widely in Atlantic Caucus. Is that something you and your colleagues are talking about?
That's something that I've heard, and I think that's something that everyone is talking about, quite frankly. If Justin Trudeau was to leave, there would be risk. If there was a divisive leadership contest, there would be risk. But the upside of having a new leader is significantly higher than if he stays, in my view.
What does it say, Mr. Casey, that 20 plus people from inside your caucus are having meetings to talk about the need for a leadership change? I mean, what does that say where you are right now as a party? Because that suggests a pretty high level of anxiety inside that caucus.
You're exactly right. There's a high level of anxiety, and there are members of caucus that every single day are hearing it in their communities, and they've come together. I mean, that's what we do. We are constantly comparing notes and determining how best to advance the interests of our constituents.
So I can hear the pushback now. You're an MP who's been around a while. You're not in cabinet. There's sour grapes motivating this. You know this is going to come from certain circles. I mean, what do you say to what is likely to be the pushback here? Because since news of these letters and these efforts started circulating on Friday, that's kind of been a bit of the pushback, that it's the people who never got what they wanted when the Liberals formed government.
This is not about me. This is about the people that I've been elected to represent. And if people want to take shots at me, I guess that's kind of what I signed up for. But that's not the reason I'm here, and that's not the reason why I am doing my best to be the voice of Charlottetown in Ottawa.
You've looked at the polls just like everybody else has. If Justin Trudeau stays and you go into the election without a massive change, I mean, where do you think the Liberal Party ends up based on what you're seeing and hearing out there?
It's honestly hard to know. The campaign's going to matter. I think the longer the spotlight shines on P.E.I, the less people are going to like him. I don't think that a turnaround in the economy is all of a sudden going to cause people to flock to the Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau again. It's hard to know. I think there is significant downside and limited upside, so I'm worried.
So you think a change in leadership potentially lowers the floor, but also potentially dramatically raises the ceiling for Liberals. Have you expressed this to the Prime Minister, to the Prime Minister's office? Do they know you feel this way?
Yes, I had a direct conversation with the Prime Minister on July the 5th and said to him many of the things that I'm saying to you now, including that in my view, history will be very kind to Justin Trudeau. The things that he has put in place over the last 9 years have been truly transformational, but the electorate are no longer listening to him. So we had that conversation on July the 5th. The Prime Minister knows exactly how I feel.
Okay, so this was the phone calls the Prime Minister was making in the wake of Toronto St. Paul's. Is that what this was, the outreach to people to see how they felt? This was part of that effort, Mr. Casey?
That's exactly right.
So what do you think happens next? The information in my reporting and what I'm hearing from other colleagues is that the people who are having these meetings of 20 plus and trying to get people to sign on to a document of some kind to bring sort of a demand or a request to the Prime Minister, this could all come to a head next week when MPs are back in Ottawa and when Parliament resumes, and of course you've got your National Caucus on next week. What do you think happens when everybody is back in the capital city?
I think you're right. I think it will come to a head. It came to a head more than a year ago in London, Ontario at Summer Caucus. There was a widespread expectation that that would happen again in Nanaimo. It didn't, but I don't think there's any doubt that that there will be a concerted effort this week to air these grievances in a private setting. Private until it leaks has been the experience, unfortunately. So yes, I do expect that will happen. But as I said, I have not attended any of the meetings. I expect that there is a coordinated plan being developed. I'm not part of it. But yes, I do expect this absolutely to be brought into the light of day within those four walls next week.
Just as a final point, it didn't come to a head in Nanaimo, as you say. My understanding is because everyone was kind of waiting to see what happened in La Salle-Marde-Verdun, which was kind of a repeat of Toronto-St. Paul's. Do you think that has been a trigger point for a lot of this, that Toronto was bad, Montreal was just worse, and then the lack of a clear change in strategy and change in the polls just has fueled this unrest?
Yes, that and what people are hearing day in and day out. But what people are hearing day in and day out is influenced by the things that you just mentioned.
Sean Casey, Liberal Member of Parliament for Charlottetown. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, David.
Okay, we're going to bring in the power panel on this. Emily Nicola is a columnist for Le Devoir. Michelle Cadario is a former Liberal National Campaign Director. Françoise Boivin is a former NDP MP. And here with me in the studio, Kate Harrison is a Conservative political analyst. It's good to see you all. Françoise, I'd like to start with you. I also asked Sean Casey how widespread the dissent was. He says, wider than it looks. And he says he's spoken to about a dozen MPs who have been in meetings of 20 plus MPs who are part of this effort to try to plot some way forward to get the Prime Minister to step aside. What are your thoughts on what we heard from Sean Casey today?
Well, to be quite honest with you, David, when I started thinking about that whole situation earlier today, after listening in what happened during the weekend and so on and so forth, I was kind of thinking, bon, here we go. We're back to the good old time on Jean Chrétien's time of the nervous Nelly and so on. When I saw who you had in an interview, Sean Casey, it kind of made me go back and rethink about the whole situation. Because first and foremost, people who are listening to us, be it you're a diehard Liberal or Conservative or whoever you want, here, Sean Casey is a very serious MP. And often the people who are part of plots and so on are the people in the background that might feel a bit, I don't have much importance and so on. Sean Casey was there when I was elected in 2011. He was the justice critic for the Liberals on the committee, working very hard. He's a loyal person to the Liberal Party of Canada. I take what he said today much more seriously than a bunch of people who works behind the scenes and we don't exactly know who they are. There could be one, David, you ask how many. There could be 1, 2, 3, or 50. The situation is grave. Not sure the Prime Minister took it as such, although what do you want him to say? Start crying on the podium, at the podium and say, this is so terrible. No, he says he's going to continue because the problem is right now, there are lacking time. It's not the United States where you just remove Joe Biden and you put Kamala Harris. There's a process in the Liberal Party. You don't designate a new candidate for Prime Minister in the next election. So more and more, I'm convinced the Prime Minister will answer by his canon and say, let's go into an election. Let's fight this together, and nothing united more people than an electoral campaign.
Okay, a little bit more information just to put out there, and Michelle, I'll come to you next. I've been speaking to a lot of Liberal MPs privately and on background about this, some who have signed this document and some who are helping organize it but have not yet signed it. Sean Casey is not one of those people. My colleague Kate McKenna reached out to him today, and he said he didn't want to be part of a backroom fueling things. I'm going to put my face to it, my name to it, and he said he delivered this message to the Prime Minister on July 5th when Trudeau was calling around to speak to caucus members after they lost Toronto St. Paul. So here he is. He's not included in the 20+ that we've heard about, maybe more than that now. What's the significance of this in your view, Michelle? What do you think?
Well, first and foremost, if if people are going to be calling on him to go, it's going to have to be publicly. And so, you can talk about however many might be on a letter, or it doesn't sound like it's a letter, but it's some kind of a document, which is unclear what that document is going to do, where it's going to go, or if anybody's going to be made public from it. So, that part I don't give a lot of credit to, but I understand that every caucus member is going to be very nervous, as they should be, right? It is not looking good. The polls are grim. And if you're not concerned about the prospects for the Liberal Party, the prospects for your own riding, then you're not in the right business. You absolutely need to be concerned. If you believe that a change of leadership at the top in a short time span is going to improve the prospects for the Liberal Party, fair ball. Come forward, be public. I think that you're elected to have a stand, and but so far there's been very, very few voices that are actually becoming public. Are those people actually speaking up at caucus? Are they being honest with the Prime Minister about how they feel? I don't know. You don't get the sense that there's that many who are being that bold as well. So in the meantime, the party's getting ready for the election. It sounds like the Prime Minister is staying. And now they actually have to have something to offer to Canadians, irregardless of who the leader is.
So, Kate, they're making all the moves that you would associate with the Prime Minister who's not leaving. They've got Andrew Bevin now as their national campaign director, replacing Jeremy Broadhurst. But the caucus meetings last week, National Caucus, Regional Caucus, Women's Caucus, we're told all of them were very difficult on this. And now we have someone putting their name and face to it. How do you think, we reached out to the Prime Minister's office for response on this. We haven't heard back yet. Yeah. What do you think they do? How do you think they can respond?
Well, it means that the Liberals are fighting a war on two fronts. They're trying to get their own legislative agenda through the House, and now they have to deal with caucus management issues. And I think, what I would observe a couple of things. This has been a very slow-moving train for the Liberals to try and get in front of, to stop and prevent. This is not something that has bubbled up overnight. To your point, Mr. Casey brought this up at the beginning of July. I suspect he was not the only one who communicated to the Prime Minister those concerns. They did not have a speech from the throne. They did not do anything differently in terms of their approach to legislation in the House. So how serious are they taking these concerns? I think we're seeing that frustration play out. I'd also observe that a lot of that frustration seems to be generating from Atlantic Caucus, where the carbon tax has been a huge, huge issue. We saw the Prime Minister dig in today in terms of, pointing out the carbon rebate landing in people's bank accounts. So they're digging in on the policy side. They're digging in on the people side with the installation of Andrew Bevin as the campaign director. So what about this mix says, I'm listening to you, caucus, and taking you seriously? There hasn't been the proper care and feeding of caucus members that has been needed for the last several months. They had ample time to try and fix this and change course, and they haven't taken those opportunities.
We've certainly seen the public expressions from Atlantic Canada. I don't know if it's just a different political culture where I'm from, where people will vent, but we've seen that. But, Emily, my colleague Louis Blouin with Radio-Canada has been speaking with Quebec MPs who are particularly anxious post La Salle-Verdun. I've spoken to some Western Canadian MPs, about this. And there's Ontario. There's every region that are feeling it and are part of this effort right now. If it goes anywhere, we don't know. But Sean Casey seems to think things will really come to a head next week when MPs are back in Ottawa and they have their caucus meeting on Wednesday. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, first of all, it does make sense, I think, culturally, that there would be more people putting their faces from Atlantic Canada. This is something we've seen before, people from Newfoundland specifically being more vocal. However, it also speaks to the fact that the Liberal caucus is very large. And I'm not sure, actually, the echoes I have make me not trust how much Liberal MPs as a caucus actually know each other and understand each other, in a sense that beyond people's close circle of trusted people, I don't know how much the slowness of the negotiation, how people hesitate. Part of it might just be that I don't know how much Liberal MPs actually trust each other to have open conversation, especially when there's a culture where there's people who are loyal to the PMO. You don't know who's going to be reporting what. So in terms of internal communication, it seems to be really, really hard for people to have a sense of what their colleagues are actually thinking. The other thing as well is that there's a lot of Liberal MPs, I think MPs in general, but especially Liberal MPs, who want to be on the winning side of this issue. And as long as there's not traction that's gained beyond a certain number, once again, the Liberal caucus is very large. We're not talking about 20-something people. That is not a number that's going to cut it at all. And if that side of people end up losing and Justin Trudeau stays, you don't want to be branded. And so that cautiousness is going to stay on as long as there isn't a rolling stone going that actually makes it dangerous to not be on the side of change. And I think we're not yet anywhere a point where we could see that. And I think part of that is because there's no clear alternative to Justin Trudeau. And if people are trying to rebel against him because they don't think he can win, they still have to put forward a name or a policy plan that would make that situation different.
Michelle, just because you have a little bit more experience with internecine Liberal situations than everyone else here, 20 to 30 MPs, which is sort of the range I think we're comfortable with, is saying are part of this. You take cabinet out, that's like almost a third of your backbench, right? And I wonder, the other thing I'm struck, so is that critical mass to force something, I wonder, but also what I'm struck by since these stories came out Friday is sort of no one's calling us to say he needs to stay. There's a deafening silence on the other side of it that is noticeable to me. Now, they've obviously been busy in the Prime Minister's office with everything we've seen about India that we're going to talk about in just a second. But what is there a tipping point? Like what do you think the numbers need to be, and what about the lack of sort of vigorous public defense of his leadership?
You need, but as you said, I've been through this before, and you need like 60-75% of caucus members that are thinking to have change. And Emily raised an interesting point. Who is the alternative? If not Mr. Trudeau, then who? And you don't hear that. You always have in every caucus at the most happiest of times a handful of MPs that are grumbling, that are unhappy, and that don't necessarily like the leadership. That's just a given in any kind of a situation. Now, I grant it, this is a different situation. This is a different time frame. We're at about a 10-year mark, and we are, not doing well in the polls. So it is a different situation, but it is not a lot of noise. 2 MPs, maybe 3 have actually come out publicly. That's a drop in the bucket. And so, if this is, they're losing time now, and we're getting really close no matter what's coming on. So, either folks have a voice or they've got to actually step it up, and we've got to get ready for the next election campaign.